Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 22. I came out of Subreal, and Dr. Carter looked at me expectantly. Well, I'm not the Rex you knew, but I'm the Rex you were supposed to put together a year and a half ago. I stood from the link couch and bowed my head toward her. Thank you for the work you did. My pleasure. A smile blossomed on Andy's face. So does this mean I won't have to put up with your clumsy attempts at seduction anymore? I blinked in surprise at her. Excuse me? You heard me. Your hearing is fine. I know. Is the change in me that obvious? Not entirely. She tossed me a flat, laminated card with my picture and the name Cyril Dent on it. Ms. Wickersham came in with this ID to get you into the cartel building. She said it was fitting that someone like you would represent us at the cartel, and she was happy to have washed your back on this, the morning of your glory. Andy watched me closely. I'm your doctor, Rex. You can tell me what happened. Nothing happened, Doctor. That I gathered from Maddie's remarks. What I want to know is, why not? Medically, I was perfectly functional, Doctor. I tucked the identification card in my jacket pocket. Ethically, I couldn't abide the idea of taking advantage of her. She'd been ordered to see to my needs, and would have done so. I don't think she would have done so willingly, and I had no desire to celebrate my return to life with rape. I guess I'm just funny that way. Andy looked surprised, then smiled. Even before this transformation, you weren't the type to insist when you had been rebuffed. But I was persistent. And your idea of impressing me was to get me nick sticks. I rolled my eyes. I assure you, Doctor, if I decide to pursue you, my conduct, taste, and style will be greatly improved. You're not the man of my dreams, Rex, but perhaps the man of some wishful thinking. We'll see. So we shall. Adieu, Doctor. Only 3 blocks away from the Cybertronic Tower, the cartel building rose from the center of Lunacy, like a monolithic memorial to some hero of antiquity. Its clean lines and the lack of ghoulish decoration marked it as quite different from the other buildings surrounding it. The only project all the corporations and the Brotherhood have worked on together. It remained plain because its owners could not decide among themselves how it should be decorated. That inability to make a decision marked many cartel proceedings. The Imperial and Bauhaus representatives were figureheads only and could not agree to any plan without corporate oversight. Cybertronics representatives had more leeway, but the Brotherhood did all it could to ignore them. Capital and Mishima had some influence, but internecine battling within the Mishima delegation made it quirky and hard to negotiate with. Capital had more direction and power within the cartel, but they would be opposing the Brotherhood in the matter of Lorraine's custody, so that crushed almost any chance of reaching a consensus in the High Council. Coral Beach met me in the lobby and took me up to the High Council Chamber Annex in Cybertronic's elevator. First time here, correct? I nodded. Even in my personal life, I never got this far. Consider this the reward in your afterlife. That could be taken as a threat. And I thought you said you'd never been to one of these sessions before. The door opened and Beach waved me through. This is our home away from home. Make yourself comfortable. Though I had not expected it, making myself comfortable would not be difficult to do. Our annex was more like a luxury apartment than it was any sort of working area. 4 doors led to small suites, complete with bedrooms, bathrooms, and windows looking out over Luna City. In the main room, a full kitchenette and wet bar took up one wall, with comfortable chairs and couches and low tables gathered at conversation nooks in the front of it. A thick pile of carpet with a Cybertronic logo woven into it covered the floor. The working area of the annex lay toward the front of the suite. 3 tiers of seats with long tables in front of them looked out through a glass wall toward the high council chamber itself. Phones, terminals, a scattering of optical discs, and some dirty plates covered most of the farthest forward table. A man sat hunched over in the middle of the mess, and if he noticed our entry, he gave no sign of it. The chamber itself was a work of art. Glass made up the entirety of the north wall and provided an exquisite view of the city stretching out before it. As darkness began to fall, the various buildings glowed with a rainbow of neon shades. Many of the decorations gave the impression of the darkening city being transformed into a stone jungle for the night. But this high up, it only looked intriguing and not menacing the way it did down on street level. The other corporations' annex suites surrounded the chamber on all 3 sides, but were set higher than floor level, so observers in the annexes had the impression of looking down on the grand sporting event. The chamber's bowl had been decorated with wood laid out in a beautiful parquet design. The wood was genuine and had been obtained by sacrificing thousands upon thousands of antiques that had been brought from Earth to Luna during the Exodus. The furnishings consisted of 6 tables with 2 chairs each. The tables did not touch each other, but were arranged to form a large hexagon. The Brotherhood's table faced away from the window, placing their delegates' backs to the panorama. I understood that had been their choice, and had been made so their annex appeared to be the whole of Luna. Bauhaus and Imperial sat on their right and left, respectively. Cybertronic took the desk directly opposite Bauhaus, with Capital to its right and Mishima to its left. A debate already raged down below. Beach hit a switch that flooded our annex with the sound of the Brotherhood's representative speaking.
So you are saying, Ambassador Robertson, that while Capital believes the reports of a Dark Legion presence and influence on Luna, you hold yourself above the rest of us by refusing to turn over the woman who has been at the center of so much activity?
Tom Robertson tugged at his vest before he answered the question. Capital, which I shall remind you was the corporation that instigated the formation of this very body, does not hold itself apart from our esteemed peers. We have ever been cooperative and, I would say, even aggressive in pressing for measures to be taken against the Dark Legion. Moreover, and this is a crucial point, no one has advanced an identification of this woman in question. In addition, no one has even hinted at her being willingly involved in any Dark Legion activity. Finally, all reports on the matter, sketchy though they may be, say the woman is utterly uncommunicative and may even be in an advanced vegetative state, so suggesting she might have intelligence value is absurd. I grinned over at Beach. Nice parry. Robertson's good. Beach nodded as the man seated next to Robertson got up and headed back toward the small doorway set beneath the edge of the Capitol Annex. He's about to get better. He's bringing in a new deputy. The rules of conduct inside the High Council specified that each corporation could only have 2 people at their table during a debate. The telephones on the desks did allow for conversation between an ambassador and his annex staff, but reliance on the phone was seen as a sign of weakness. Imperial and Bauhaus ambassadors did nothing without direct communications from their superiors, but the others tended only to use the phones to call for aid substitution. The man sitting in front of our annex half turned back toward me and spoke with bored indifference.
The new Capital guy coming in is Nicholas Kale, part of their waste management staff.
Beach smiled. Thanks, McNelly. Kale is really internal security at Capital.
So I understand.
I leaned forward on one of the observation tables to study my brother more carefully. He looked a lot older than I remember, even older than he appeared in the video of my funeral. His brown hair was shot with gray at the temples, and he was beginning to get the bags under his eyes that made my father look as if he had seldom slept. Nick had kept in better shape than our father, so he appeared trim, but his suit's vest strained a bit against the buttons when he sat down. Seeing him again shocked me. Though he had changed, he hadn't changed enough for me to fail to recognize him. Though I knew he couldn't see me behind the smoked glass fronting our annex, I could easily imagine the smile he'd have on his face when he saw me again. Despite the changes I had undergone, I was still his brother. The tall, slender Brotherhood representative waited for Nick to take his place before he answered Robertson's questions.
The lack of identification of this woman is not because such does not exist, Ambassador. She came to Venus on one of your ships as Lorena Coran. We understand her real name is Lorena Coven, and she was a citizen of yours who lived in a Venusian settlement called Fairview. Need I go on?
Robertson leaned down toward my brother, nodding once at whatever Nick whispered to him. As he straightened up again, he gave the Brotherhood diplomat a cold smile. I'm afraid, Bishop Fulgencio, you will have to be more specific in your identification. My aide informs me that we have no records of Lorraine Coven or a settlement on Venus called Fairview. Fulgencio calmly smoothed the red tabard he wore over his black robe before he replied.
I am aware of Mr. Kell and his efforts for your cooperation. He is misinformed. Perhaps, Bishop, you could provide us with some of your sources so we could have a better grasp upon our own corporate structures. I am certain that Mr. Kell would love a list of those in the capital who oppose the Dark Legion. Surely, Bishop, that would compromise the entire staff of our corporation. I believe that Mr. Robertson would be surprised at the omissions on that list.
That could be so, Bishop, but I doubt it sincerely. However, in view of your reluctance to provide us with material proof of this woman's existence, I see no reason we should continue any inquiry about her. I frowned. Wait a minute. If they kill the discussion right here, we've got no chance of getting her back. Beach nodded. I believe Ambassador Grayson knows that. But she did not expect Capital to stonewall the woman's existence. But she has proof Lorraine Coven exists. She can use the video from the operation that rescued Lorraine. I avoided calling her Sandra because of the threat to her that the discovery of her true identity could produce. Why doesn't she say anything? McNally looked back over his shoulder at me, with irritation clearly evident on his face.
The data you gathered was pulled together in a manner that we don't want to reveal. The Brotherhood is already wary of anything we may say or do. If we gave them even a hint what we knew and were capable of discovering, they would step up efforts to destroy us.
But if we don't intervene and get Capital to admit she exists, they'll bury her, and then we'll never be able to help her recover.
McNeely shrugged. There's plenty more where she came from.
No, there isn't. That's part of the problem. I slammed my fist down on the table, and Formica shattered. She was a friend of mine, and I'm not going to let her get stuffed into a hole somewhere. What happened to her was not her fault, and she shouldn't have to pay for it.
You can't,
McNeely started, but stopped when Beach held his hand up. What can you do, Dent? Beach pointed at Robertson and my brother. They say she doesn't exist, and that adamant stonewalling effort is a tough defense to break down. Unless you've got a big enough battering ram. I came around and sat in the front row of the Annex's viewing porch. Can I call the Capitol table from here? It better be very important. McNeely shook his head. I forgot, this is life and death. He gave me a number, and I punched it in. I saw a small red light glowing on the Capitol desk. Then my brother answered the phone in his hushed voice. Co. Nikki, admit Lorraine Coven exists."
"Who is this?"
Confusion rang through his voice.
"This is no time to be playing a trick."
"No tricks, Nikki. Just time for the truth. She can get help, but you have to admit she exists."
"What are you talking about? Who are you?"
"Nick, admit she exists, or the truth about Cassandra Ellsworth will come out." I saw him stiffen, then lean forward and rest his forearm on the heel of his left hand.
"Who are you?"
I almost told him, but held back for a moment in case I needed more leverage. Monsignor Ellsworth had too many friends who cared for him to leave all of them thinking he was dead. Admit to Lorraine Coven, or the truth can get out and hurt a lot of people.
"This is a horrible joke."
He tried to sound convincing, but surprise had taken its toll.
"Lorraine Coven does not exist."
"Nick, you don't want to see her like that for the rest of her life. She can be helped." I choked back a lump in my throat. "Admit she exists, and Anna will have her sister back." My brother returned the phone to its cradle and beckoned Robertson close. They discussed things, then Robertson patted my brother on the shoulder and turned to address the chamber.
"Mr. Kale's staff has just reported that they discovered records involving Lorraine Coven, and she was one of our people. She came to Luna for treatment of a nervous disorder and has been discharged from care." That admission brought murmurings from the other representatives, but Bishop Fulgencio accepted it gracefully. "My compliment to Mr. Kale's staff and their diligence. You will turn the woman over to us, will you not?" Robertson smiled painfully. "There is a problem with that, Excellency. Mrs. Coven is no longer on Luna. She departed 12 hours ago, nearly 10 hours before you called for this meeting, on the Black Queen. She's bound for Mars." Harry Murdoch, dressed in a suit made from his family's green and black hunting tartan, rose from behind the Imperial table. "Now that you've admitted you have the woman, Robertson, you'll be bringing her back." Robertson stalled as my brother retreated to the Capitol Annex, and another aide came to take his place. "Bring her back? What do you mean, Ambassador Murdoch?" "Being so obvious that you can understand me, Robertson. I mean, you'll be bringing the Black Queen back here, so you can turn the woman over to the ministrations of the Brotherhood, of course." "Ah, I see." Robertson got coaching from his aide, then shook his head. "I regret to say, ladies and gentlemen, that we will not be recalling the Black Queen." Erika Riechthausen glared at Robertson from the Bauhaus table. "You risk a charge of contempt of counsel, mein Herr." Appearing every bit of Valkyrie, she pointed at him and dared to contradict her. "First, she does not exist, then she does, and you will not return her to us." "I meant to suggest nothing of the sort, Madam Ambassador. We will not be recalling the ship, this is true. My colleague, Mr. Newmar, of our transit division, informs me that recalling the Black Queen would result in an expenditure of 500,000 Cardinal's crowns." Erika transferred her frown into a predatory grin. "Then you will have to pay it, will you not, Ambassador Robertson?" "Not all of it, Ambassador. Bauhaus has cargo comprising 25% of the ship's manifest. You will absorb that cost in accord with your contract." Robertson shrugged easily. "That is just the flat cost of fuel, of course. The delays caused by supplies not reaching their destinations on Mars could be economically disastrous. Imagine, for example, if some of those things you were shipping or that Mishima has going out there on that ship are spare parts for your security forces. The delay might prove to be very problematic. And I doubt you wish to force a decision upon me and my company that will cause you harm." Both Richtenhouse and Murdoch read the threat in Robertson's words and blanched. If others learned they had cost their companies that much money and trouble, they would themselves be consigned to methane recovery on Pluto. Robertson looked from one ambassador to the other and finally stopped at Olivia Grayson. Has Cybertronic an interest in this matter?
Though a petite woman, Grayson moved with a fluid grace that made her seem more powerful than one would have expected. Being seated behind her, I could not see her facial expression, but Robertson's reaction to her indicated he did not like it.
Thank you, Ambassador. We are merely concerned with the woman's well-being. We would suggest sending a party out to get Mrs. Coven and return her here to Luna. We're prepared to offer personnel and equipment in this effort.
Mishima's Ambassador Kentoro concurred.
Mishima is likewise willing to aid in this matter. The Overlord himself directed all efforts to be taken to assure this woman is returned to Luna.
The Brotherhood Ambassador smiled.
You see, Mr. Robertson, admit the truth and many helping hands will be held out to you. You will permit this multi-partisan mission to bring back Mrs. Colvin to Luna.
Your kind offers are most appreciated. Robertson bowed his head to his peers.
I cannot render this decision myself. I must consult with my superiors.
Fulgencio returned the bow.
That is understood. Shall we adjourn?
As the High Council broke, Beach poured himself a glass of water from a pitcher on the bar. Tomorrow, Capital will agree, and Mrs. Coven will be as good as back in our hands. I hope you're right, Beach. He frowned at me.
What is it, Dent?
Probably nothing. I sighed and tried to banish the knot congealing in my stomach. It's just that Ragathal intended his people to bring Lorraine to Mars. I can't help but think that even if we were to set out after her right now, we'd still be too late.
Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 22, End.